studio. Simply visit sbs.com.au/mastermind to apply. Do join us again tomorrow evening. Until then, I'm Jennifer Byrne, and good night.
Why Australia's two biggest states are refusing to relax restrictions for Mother's Day, and the federal government's plan to get Australia moving. US President Donald Trump likens coronavirus to an act of war.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor.
What did Cardinal George Pell know about pedophiles in the church? Findings from the Royal Commission revealed today. And decades of progress undone. The devastating impact of coronavirus on African wildlife.
This is SBS World News with Janice Petersen.
Good evening. Disappointment for many Australians tonight looking for an easing of COVID-19 restrictions for Mother's Day this weekend. The federal government is also playing down any expectations of a quick move to resuming the lifestyles we once enjoyed. In other developments here and around the world, Britain becomes the first nation in Europe to record 30,000 deaths. The federal government may consider a travel exemption for international students. New Zealand says it's halfway down Everest as the country moves to ease restrictions. Here in Australia, 22 cases have been reported in the last 24 hours, mainly in Victoria, which has been grappling with an outbreak at an abattoir. There are currently 759 active cases of COVID-19. More than 6,000 people have recovered. But first, clusters in two states continue to worry authorities as they stand firm on easing restrictions.
Relatives of Newmarch residents continue their vigils outside the aged care home, where 3 more staff have tested positive in the past 24 hours. The home's operator Anglicare meeting a 5 p.m. deadline by the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission to agree to new obligations or lose its licence to operate. Anglicare today appointing an external advisor to oversee its response to the outbreak, which has claimed the lives of 16 residents. The operator says it is confident with the support of the advisor and the Commission, issues at Newmarch will be resolved expeditiously.
It's a good thing to have another pair of eyes in there for sure. I think they should have been in there about 2 weeks ago.
Australia's fastest growing outbreak is now the Cedar Meats abattoir in Melbourne, responsible for all but one of the state's 14 new cases. The chain of infection leading to the lockdown of a Melbourne aged care facility after a positive case among staff.
That's the nature of outbreaks. This is a very infectious disease. It spreads rapidly. It can get away from you very, very quickly.
The risk of more outbreaks leading to calls for new regulations to protect workers from COVID-19 exposure.
We've got regulations for things like asbestos and chemicals. We need one for the coronavirus, so it's really clear for all employers.
South Australia has seen an end to a 2-week streak with no new cases, a returning Australian traveller now testing positive. While the COVID-19 clusters in New South Wales and Victoria have driven up Australia's case numbers, the rate of uncontrolled transmission here in the community remains low across the country. That's led Queensland, which relaxed some measures last weekend, to continue lifting restrictions. From this weekend, the state will permit home visits of up to 5 people.
I think this is going to be welcomed by families, especially on Mother's Day, starting this Sunday.
But New South Wales and Victoria are not following Queensland's lead.
I doubt very much that New South Wales will be in a position to implement anything before Mother's Day.
I can tell you what I'll be doing on Mother's Day. I will not be visiting my mum, even if it was lawful for me to do that.
The debate on easing restrictions top of the agenda at tomorrow's National Cabinet meeting.
What I expect is a clear roadmap out with clear stages, and then each state will be able to judge, and we'll support each of the states as they make their judgments.
Even if some restrictions are relaxed, social distancing will remain the new normal for the foreseeable future. Naveen Razik, SBS World News.
Scott Morrison has joined in a video hookup this evening with other world leaders who have successfully flattened the coronavirus curve. The Prime Minister outlining Australia's 5-step response to the crisis as states and territories prepare to ease restrictions gradually over the next 2 months.
an unlikely alliance in the fight against coronavirus. Austria's 33-year-old Chancellor convening the so-called First Movers, the leaders of Israel, Denmark, the Czech Republic, New Zealand and Australia, swapping notes via video link as they become the first to lead their nations on the road out of the COVID-19 crisis.
Well, we're all trying to learn from each other.
An unapologetic Scott Morrison continuing to call for a global independent inquiry into the origins of the virus, writing to every G20 leader, including President Xi of China, who he is yet to formally meet, urging them to support the European Union's push for a review at the upcoming World Health Assembly in Geneva.
Well, that's why we need an independent scientific investigation. We just have to know and get to the bottom of it.
The Prime Minister also lobbying state and territory leaders, warning that while the nationwide shutdown was instant, reopening businesses will take time. Having fought the virus and delivered immediate relief, Australia is now set to move to step 3, reopening society. From there, the government aims to build confidence before resetting the economy in the delayed October budget.
But until there's a vaccine, then there isn't the possibility of us getting fully back to normal. But we want to get back to it as close as we possibly can.
Conceding while the states and territories will ultimately pull those levers, it is the federal government left to pay the bill. SBS News understands next week's budget statement will reveal every key economic indicator is falling.
Well, we need to bite the bullet at some point in these restrictions, and this weekend is a reasonable time to very carefully and gradually start to do that. And I think that's the key.
Restrictions will be gradually eased over 3 key stages between now and July. States and territories to move at their own pace towards the same shared deadline for a COVID-safe economy. Without a vaccine, Australia's international borders are unlikely to reopen. Even the so-called Trans-Tasman Safe Travel Zone is months away from liftoff, as the priority shifts from flattening one curve to flattening another. Brett Mason, SBS World News.
US President Donald Trump has described the coronavirus pandemic as the worst attack ever on the United States. He's blamed Beijing for failing to prevent the pandemic as rhetoric between the two global superpowers becomes more fraught.
In the United States, with 1.2 million cases and rising, it's America-China relations that appear increasingly infected.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this. And it should have never happened. Could have been stopped at the source. Could have been stopped in China.
An exact accounting of the pandemic's origin demanded by the Secretary of State.
The Chinese say they want to cooperate. Great. Cooperation is about action. It's about opening up. It's about sharing this information. Every one of us stares at this and knows the reality. The reality that this came from Wuhan.
Mike Pompeo, who's claimed there's significant evidence the virus came from a Wuhan lab, suggesting the press quiz China's top diplomat to the US.
You should ask Ambassador Shui.
But Ambassador Shui choosing to have his say in the Washington Post. Blaming China will not end this pandemic. On the contrary, the mindset risks decoupling China and the United States and hurting our efforts to fight the disease, our coordination to reignite the global economy. The United States would not emerge as a winner from this scenario. In Beijing, the Foreign Ministry saying nations have a choice to make between multilateral cooperation and unilateral bullying.
美国的一些政客是出于国内政治的需要，一再的罔顾事实，来向中国推责和甩锅。
A White House reporter attempting to nail down where the testy rhetoric leaves the superpowers.
How does the White House view the U.S. relationship with China right now?
Right now, it's a relationship of disappointment and frustration.
Frustration all around. More than 74,000 Americans dead. In Texas, which is opening up, Houston's mayor sounding the alarm.
We're going a bit too fast, and the worst thing that can happen is that 3 to 4 weeks from now, we see that the numbers are really going up, and then we have to decide whether or not we're going to reverse course and ask people to stay home even more.
The president reversing course, abandoning his plan from 24 hours ago to close his COVID-19 task force.
I had no idea how popular the task force is until actually yesterday. When I started talking about winding it down, I'd get calls from very respected people saying, I think it would be better to keep it going.
The virus death count ongoing, more than 2,000 lives lost in the past 24 hours. Prula One, SBS World News.
Britain has become the first European nation to record 30,000 COVID-19 deaths, with the Prime Minister conceding there will need to be a review into whether different decisions should have been taken. Many other countries in Europe are now taking tentative steps to reopening for business, with car factories resuming production in Italy and football set to restart in Germany.
Another grim milestone for the United Kingdom. The government's medical advisors had said 20,000 deaths would be a good result, while the Prime Minister once boasted of Britain's apparent success in handling the pandemic. As the death toll reached 30,076, those words came back to haunt him.
That's not success or apparent success. So can the Prime Minister tell us how on earth did it come to this?
Every death is a tragedy, and he's right to draw attention to the appalling statistics. At every stage as we took the decisions that we did, we were governed by one overriding principle and aim, and that was to save lives and to protect our NHS. And I believe that, of course, there will be a time to look at what decisions we took and whether we could have taken different decisions.
Boris Johnson confirmed that he will reveal the UK's roadmap out of lockdown on Sunday and that some measures are likely to come into effect on Monday, but he warned that change will be gradual and likely slower than we've seen in other European countries. In Italy, now the second worst affected country in Europe, factories are slowly coming back to life. Lamborghinis are once again rolling off the production line.
In every single post of assembly, there are 2 people working, and they keep the distance of more than 1 meter, as is predicted by the law.
While luxury cars are being made, there might not be many buyers. Experts predict the EU economy will contract by a record 7.4% this year.
It is now quite clear that the EU has entered the deepest economic recession in its history.
Germany has weathered the storm better than many of its neighbours. Museums are welcoming art lovers again, while the country's top football league, the Bundesliga, will resume this month, albeit in empty stadiums.
Frau Lunz, wir haben eine sehr, sehr gute Entwicklung der Neuinfektionszahlen. Und die ermöglicht es schon, weitere Schritte zu gehen.
The country's famed beer gardens will reopen at the weekend, meaning it will soon be last rounds for this drive-through version. Ben Lewis, SBS World News.
Coming up next, a board of inquiry into mining safety is flagged after a coal mine explosion in central Queensland. From saving lives in ICU to being kicked out of the house, a doctor's story. And shaking and swaying, the phenomenon that caused a 6-lane bridge to wobble.
Tonight at 7:30, World's Most Beautiful Railway. Then at 8:30, while we're in the mood for trains, we uncover the origin story of our favourite locomotives in How the Victorians Built Britain. Then we switch the train for a ferry in Building Britain's Canals. On Insight,
I want someone to give me a hug.
Solo sailor Jessica Watson.
My little boat with my whole world.
Explorers and experts on life after isolation.
There will be an adjustment period.
Then, on Dateline, the deadly impact of coronavirus has deepened the divide between France's rich and poor. Is this the start of the next French Revolution? Insight followed by Dateline, Tuesday from 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
Now listen to what I'm telling you. If you want to make money, there's ways to do it. Laws are for cowards.
The new series 000 starts next Thursday 9:30 on SBS and on demand.
Harvey Norman has everything you need for your home. Come into our spacious stores for the best of Australian made. Choose Australian made timber and fabric beds and customise the fabric, colour and timber stain to suit your home. Our range features the best names in Australian made mattresses and ensembles. Sealy, Sleepmaker, Beauty Rest, King Coil and Body Balance. Complete your sleep experience with beautiful Australian made Manchester. Support local manufacturers and choose Australian made. Everything you need for your home. Browse online and shop in store. Now at Harvey Norman.
Go!
You don't give in. You don't give up. You push on when most would have pushed off. You lend a hand, whether a hand was asked for or not. It's called Aussie Spirit for good reason, because it takes spirit to get through times like these. Lucky you've got it in spades. It's what inspires us to be by your side to help. Together we'll get through this. We always do. Search Toyota, here to help.
When things change unexpectedly, we adapt. When things get complicated, we adapt. When we need to do things differently, we adapt. At Newcastle Permanent, we're adapting too, by increasing our Hunter-based call centre team to assist you and help give you some financial peace of mind. Because if one thing's certain in these uncertain times, we're here for you, and we're here for good.
This may be our biggest May yet on SBS On Demand.
I'm looking for the light.
I can't do this. Has Dave been dating a lot?
He's on fire, like John Mayer on fire.
Is that more or less than DiCaprio? More. Wow.
You know why we're not going to lose money on this? Because what we do keeps the world's economy afloat.
I'm looking for the light.
We're not drug dealers. We're shipping brokers.
Let's face it, investment banking is cold. Brauchen wir zu jemanden wie dich. This is the future of banking. I'm going to destroy you.
Are you up for that?
I'm looking for the antidote.
It's a massive May on SBS On Demand. 5 days of grand finals, a Eurovision first hosted by Myth and Joel, and an exclusive live show from Europe. Come together for a TV event like no other. Eurovision Week, Monday from 1:30 on SBS and On Demand.
The Queensland Government is flagging setting up a rare board of inquiry into mine safety after an underground blast at a Queensland coal mine left 5 workers critically injured. The state's mine minister has threatened to throw the kitchen sink at the issue. The mining union says concerns about gas levels were raised before the explosion at the Anglo-American Moranbah mine. It remains closed while investigations continue.
A late night Mercy flight. 5 coal miners with horrific injuries from a blast deep underground, transferred to intensive care in a Brisbane hospital.
Our thoughts are with the families, and we do hope the very best for these men who have been tragically injured in this accident.
The explosion happened yesterday afternoon at the Grosvenor Metallurgical Coal Mine in Moranbah, southwest of Mackay, operated by multinational miner Anglo-American. 4 of the miners here at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital are in a critical condition on ventilators. A 5th is in a serious condition, all with burns to their airways and upper torsos. Anglo-American today describing the incident as devastating.
Our focus right now is on supporting our injured colleagues and their families to ensure they have everything they need. We will work through this step by step with the authorities to understand what went wrong, drawing on the best possible expertise.
The mining union says safety concerns about gas build-ups at the mine were previously raised.
And there's been issues with gas at this mine, with gas trips, with gas leakage, for a better word, and I guess again that'll be a part of the investigation. We're looking at all these factors leading up to it and exactly what levels of gas were in place at the mine.
7 lives have been lost in the Queensland coal mining industry in the last 17 months. The industry promised a safety reset last year. The state government is now threatening tough action.
We want answers to why this event occurred. We demand answers. An appropriate investigation will follow. We are throwing the kitchen sink at this issue.
So I'm taking very seriously the issue of having a board of inquiry that would involve public hearings and I'll be getting some legal advice around that.
Mine inspectors and union officials are on site, and mining has been suspended during the investigation into the incident. Stefan Armbruster, SBS World News.
It's more than 2 years since the Royal Commission into Child Sex Abuse delivered its findings to Parliament. But the findings related to the evidence of Cardinal George Pell were redacted due to the legal action he was facing. Now they've been released in full. It's concluded that Cardinal Pell was conscious of child sexual abuse by members of the clergy as far back as 1973.
The Royal Commission report released unredacted. For survivors of abuse by Catholic clergy in Ballarat and Melbourne, the findings are unsurprising.
This just confirms what us survivors have always thought, that Cardinal Pell knew and he did nothing about it.
Cardinal George Pell gave evidence to the Royal Commission in February 2016. Last month, he was unanimously acquitted of sexual assault by the High Court. Now that a court can't be influenced by the Royal Commission's findings, the full report has been released. In 1973, George Pell was assistant priest at Ballarat East Parish. The Royal Commission found by then he'd heard rumours of offending by other members in the clergy. Father Pell lived with Gerald Ridsdale, a man who'd go on to become the country's most notorious pedophile priest. He heard Ridsdale had taken boys on overnight camping trips. In their report, the commissioners said, "We are satisfied that by 1973, Cardinal Pell was not only conscious of child sexual abuse by clergy, but that he had also considered measures of avoiding situations which might provoke gossip about it." Ridsdale's abusing continued for a further decade across 13 institutions. Cardinal Pell told the Royal Commission he didn't suspect anything was wrong with Ridsdale until 1989, when he was in a senior position at the Archdiocese of Melbourne. The Royal Commission rejected that evidence. In 1989, Father Petersen was the subject of a number of complaints about sexual abuse, as well as strange and aggressive conduct. At the time, Pell was an auxiliary bishop at the Archdiocese of Melbourne. Father Petersen was never charged, but the Royal Commission found, on the basis of what was known to Bishop Pell in 1989, it ought to have been obvious to him at the time. He should have advised the Archbishop to remove Father Petersen, and he did not do so. 9 years later, when George Pell became Archbishop, he put Father Petersen on administrative leave. In a statement, Cardinal Pell said he was surprised by some of the views of the Royal Commission, saying they were not supported by the evidence. And the parish Father Petersen was working in 1989 did not mention sexual assaults and did not ask for Petersen's removal. The current Bishop of Ballarat said he was glad to see the unredacted findings, adding, "I acknowledge the past failings in governance in the diocese that allowed the terrible abuse of so many children. The diocese is also continuing to meet its legal and pastoral responsibilities to the victims of sexual abuse."
All we want is for this not to happen to more children in the future, because we know the hell it is. And it's so destructive.
There's no response yet from the Archbishop of Melbourne. Rachel Carey, SBS World News.
The federal government says it may consider a travel exemption for international students, with the university sector losing billions of dollars a year in revenue. The National COVID-19 Coordination Commission chief is suggesting international students be brought back on charter flights.
An empty campus leading to empty coffers. At least 10% of international students are stuck overseas.
Clearly, without any international students coming to the country, Australia's fourth biggest industry is in a major crisis.
International students are a $40 billion a year industry, prompting consideration of a travel ban exemption.
Down the track, these are things that we can look at
The National COVID-19 Coordination Commission chair floating the idea of charter flights to bring students back. There's an opportunity here for the universities to work with government to provide safe processes, expedite those visas, get those international students back here as quickly as we can. An idea dividing opinions amongst the students they'll share a classroom with.
No, I think it's better to keep the border closed for a bit long time.
They're paying students as well, which surely should give them some kind of a right.
Leaving many international students considering if they should commit to another semester in Australia.
The next semester is starting soon, and some of them have received conditional offer that they are not sure if they should take it because they don't know if they can come back to Australia in time.
The council says some are choosing to defer as they're not willing to pay upwards of $20,000 per year for a partially online degree. In China alone, there are 80,000 students enrolled in Australian universities who are unable to return. When you include India, Nepal and other countries, that figure is well over 100,000. The pandemic is estimated to be costing the international education industry at least $8 billion this year. But Universities Australia says institutions won't rush into returning to on-campus learning.
The health of the student and staff body is absolutely the number one concern.
Despite estimates, the pandemic will lead to 21,000 job losses and a $4 billion hit to revenues in just the first year. Abby Dinham, SBS World News. The global debate about when it's safe to reopen economies continues. Countries such as Russia and Brazil are easing restrictions even as cases soar, while New Zealand appears to be the envy of the world right now, as it comes halfway down Everest, in the words of Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Almost 3.8 million people globally have been infected, with the death toll now at more than 263,000.
For weeks, New Zealanders have experienced the world's toughest lockdown measures, but today a glimmer of hope for cooped-up Kiwis.
Level 2 has been designed to get as many people back to work as possible.
The country has recorded no fresh cases for 2 consecutive days, so hairdressers, restaurants, bars and competitive sports could all begin operating as early as next Wednesday, and events such as weddings can include up to 100 guests, both indoors and outdoors, but social distancing will remain.
At level 2, the aim is still to reduce close contact with strangers. It acknowledges that the virus is probably still with us, so we do need to behave differently to prevent it taking off again.
New Zealand's elimination strategy has seen just 21 deaths, but a significant hit to the economy. It's a radically different situation in Russia, which has recorded 10,000 new infections for the 4th day in a row. Despite the accelerating numbers, industrial plants and construction sites in Moscow will reopen next week. In South America's virus hotspot Brazil, the contagion shows no signs of slowing, the country recording its highest daily death toll, 615 fatalities, only a day after the president said the worst was over. Jair Bolsonaro coming under increasing attack for his COVID-19 response.
When you have 2 viruses to combat, the coronavirus and Bolsonaro virus,
Japan's Prime Minister says he's listening to his expert advisors, extending the country's state of emergency until the end of the month. The government has also approved the use of Ebola drug remdesivir, which has been successful in reducing patients' recovery time. As nations grapple with how to manage the pandemic, the original epicentre of the virus, Wuhan in China, is showing the world what normal looks like and sending their children back to school. Catalina Flores, SBS World News.
As we heard earlier, US President Donald Trump has described the pandemic as the worst attack ever on the United States, and he's blamed Beijing for failing to prevent it. SBS reporter Patrick Fock joins us now live from Beijing, where the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has just completed a briefing. So Patrick, good evening. Was there any reaction to the latest comments from Washington?
Yeah, there certainly was. And these were remarkable comparisons, a lot of people might say, insinuating that the pandemic was a deliberate attack on China, these comparisons with Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Now, while President Trump has been dialing up the criticism against China, Mike Pompeo seems to have been dialing it down. He previously said, if you remember, that he had overwhelming evidence. He'd seen overwhelming evidence that the virus may have originated from a lab. Now he said that he isn't absolutely certain that that's the case, and it may have come from the lab, it may have come from the wet market in Wuhan, but the bottom line is that it was a lack of transparency which has led to this outbreak. Now, the Chinese have really pounced on that today at the Foreign Ministry press briefing that you speak of. They said that the Americans were telling one lie to cover another. And in a way, the Americans have put themselves in a little bit of a difficult position here, because previously the onus, if you like, or the focus was really on the Chinese to have some sort of investigation into the origins of the virus. But now there is pressure on the Americans to show what proof it has for these remarks. And Mike Pompeo may very well regret saying these things if there isn't any credible proof to back it up.
Thank you so much. That's Patrick Fock updating us live from Beijing. Doctors in the US and the UK are investigating what they say is a new, rare and serious complication of COVID-19 in a small number of children. A cluster has been reported in New York City, and the World Health Organization is reassuring parents that cases of this syndrome are very rare. Meanwhile, Australian authorities say there have been no reports of the syndrome here.
The complications 12-year-old American girl Juliet Daly endured with coronavirus are surely every parent's worst nightmare.
Her heart stopped, and they had to do extreme measures. They had to do 2 minutes of CPR on her.
Doctors believe Juliet was struck down with a new and very rare syndrome linked to coronavirus.
I never thought I would have to see my child go through anything like that, and it was terrifying.
She's one of 15 children who've required hospitalisation in the US for what doctors describe as a kind of inflammatory shock syndrome.
You hear frequently that the new novel coronavirus is sparing children, but I would venture to say very confidently that no, that's not true.
Clinicians in New York told to be on the lookout for this syndrome in children after cases were first reported in Europe last month. Symptoms include abdominal pain, fits or seizures, skin rashes, patients in shock or passing out. The symptoms are similar to Kawasaki disease, a rare condition which can cause heart damage in children.
And it seems to be the body's immune system reacting to something and causing this, what we call vasculitis, inflammation of the blood vessels in multiple organs.
As scientists seek to understand this new syndrome, health officials want to reassure parents.
There's been no reporting of that in Australia, and as we know, the number of children actually contracting COVID-19 has been extremely low.
This is a rare complication, and one should always be watchful in children who are experiencing infectious disease for any deterioration in their condition. But I think it's important that parents out there are reassured.
So far, no children have died from this inflammatory condition. Felicity Davey, SBS World News.
The Northern Territory is gearing up for stage 2 of eased restrictions with the opening of pubs and restaurants. 175,000 litres of kegged beer was delivered to the top end this morning. Territorians were applauded for their good behaviour during stage 1 of eased restrictions during its unveiling. The Northern Territory government says border restrictions will remain steadfast.
The border is what allows us to act fast on how we're bringing back the jobs inside the Northern Territory, and we've got to be extremely cautious about what we do around the borders.
Pubs and restaurants will reopen as of next Friday, with restrictions completely lifted by mid-June. To Venezuela now, and the nation's president has escalated his accusations against the United States, labelling Donald Trump the chief director of a failed coup. Authorities have released a video confession from a captured American alleged to have been among a group of mercenaries in a bid to bolster Nicolas Maduro's claims.
What's your name?
Luke Alexander Denman.
Filmed in an undisclosed location, his interrogators never shown. Luke Denman, believed to be ex-US Special Forces and now a captive of Venezuelan authorities, appears to admit to his role in a foiled attempt to overthrow the president.
I was helping Venezuelans take back control.
Denman says he and Aaron Berry, another US soldier, were contracted by Silvercorp, a Florida-based security company. The mission, to train 300 Venezuelans in the Colombian jungle, sneak into Venezuela in fishing boats, then capture President Nicolas Maduro and fly him out of the country. But the alleged conspirators were either arrested or killed as they reached the shore. Silvercorp is run by Jordan Goudreau, a former Green Beret.
Who commands Jordan?
President Donald Trump.
Who gave you the weapons and the tactical uniforms?
Jordan through Silvercorp.
The heavily edited confession aired on Venezuelan state media to validate President Maduro's assertions of American-backed treason.
Este combatiente mercenario de Estados Unidos, el presidente Donald Trump, es el jefe directo.
Nothing to do with our government.
The US president has already denied the accusation. Today, his Secretary of State unequivocal.
There was no US government direct involvement in this operation. If we'd have been involved, it would have gone differently.
President Maduro's major international ally Russia weighing in. Washington's statements that the government has nothing to do with what happened in Venezuela over the last few days sound unconvincing. After announcing a further 4 arrests overnight, President Maduro broadened blame to his opponent Juan Guaidó, recognized by some global powers like the US as Venezuela's true leader. Mr. Maduro revealed what he called a signed contract between the conspirators and Mr. Guaidó to execute the coup. Mr. Guaidó rubbishes the claim, but Jordan Goudreau says the contract is legitimate and worth millions. Caracas now says it wants to extradite Mr. Goudreau. Washington has confirmed it's making moves to ensure the American captives are returned home. Omar Dehen, SBS World News.
A concrete sea bridge in southern China remains closed after it began shaking violently in high wind. Vision shows the 3.5-kilometre long Humen Bridge in Guangdong province undulating wildly. According to Chinese media, the phenomenon began after whirlwinds caused a massive vortex under the bridge. Preliminary examinations have reportedly shown the main structure is not damaged. Well, business groups are calling for the immediate reopening of all state and territory borders. SBS Finance Editor Ricardo Gonçalves joins me with more. And Ricardo, it comes ahead of tomorrow's National Cabinet meeting.
Janice, new figures have painted a grim picture for the business sector. The Australian Industry Group says business performance fell at record speed in April to 27.2. It's the lowest monthly result for the index and well below the 50-point level that signifies growth, with a sharp downturn in new orders and activity.
No sector of the economy is immune, but this aluminium business in Melbourne is bucking the trend, with the help of 2 friends who lost their jobs in the fitness industry.
I said to them, we have a workshop and you know the industry, so we'll start making some gym equipments.
But if action isn't taken to allow others to get back to work, for many it could be too little, too late.
The longer this goes, the harder it will be both economically and socially to recover. So that's why we need to take steps now to try to turn things around, and that's what business is saying.
National Cabinet will meet tomorrow to consider rolling back some restrictions. The Australian Industry Group is calling for state borders to be reopened to create more certainty for businesses.
Once that happens, we can start to get our economy moving again and get people back into jobs, and that's a key point. We're seeing enormous economic destruction unfold before our eyes at the moment, and we need to start to take measures to turn that around.
An Australian National University report today paints a grim picture. Household income is set to drop by $102 billion this year, while 1 in 4 working Australians think they could be out of a job within 12 months. And on average, Australians are working 4 hours a week less than before. Younger Australians and women born in non-English speaking countries are feeling the squeeze most.
They can't draw on other financial resources. They probably have smaller networks which they can draw on to help support themselves.
Australians in the lowest 10% of earners have posted an income increase of over 30%, in many cases due to the government's JobKeeper payments.
It might widen again, but at least in the first couple of months of the COVID-19 recession, there's been a decline in income inequality.
And Ali's aluminium business hasn't laid off anyone as the gym orders keep coming in.
Going full steam ahead, orders are keeping coming in every day. We can't keep up.
John Baldock, SBS World News.
People who have applied to access their superannuation early are being urged to remain vigilant after as many as 150 accounts were targeted by fraudsters. The AFP says no government systems have been hacked, but it is investigating a third-party provider which had been.
We have executed 5 search warrants in relation to this matter within our jurisdiction. There is our assessment so far is that there's up to 150 victims of this particular fraud, and that we have actually identified some bank accounts and actually had those bank accounts frozen with approximately $120,000 all up.
Australians financially impacted by the pandemic are able to access up to $20,000 of retirement savings over 2 years. Australia's trade surplus has shot to an all-time record in March, rising 174% to $10.6 billion. That's well above forecasts. While imports fell 4%, exports surged as China came out of lockdown.
Well, I think the two-way trade with China has increased 21% month on month. We've seen iron ore exports up a lazy 36%, and that's accounted for a large chunk of the trade surplus we've seen. Gold exports are up 220% as well.
China also released its trade balance today, with exports unexpectedly rising 3.5% compared to a year ago as factories restarted production. Analysts had been forecasting a 15% decline. And on the share market, resource stocks rose as a result. BHP by 2%. Mosaic Brands, which owns retailers Rivers and Katie's, surged. It will progressively reopen stores from Monday. But the banks finished lower, and it was that weakness from financial stocks which ultimately saw the 200 close down 0.4%. The Australian dollar is buying 64.6 US ahead of the RBA statement on monetary policy due out tomorrow. NAB expects capital city home prices will continue to fall between 10 and 15% over the next 12 to 18 months, with units to take the biggest hit. Sydney and Melbourne apartment prices are predicted to decline the most this year, down 8.8% and 10% respectively. Next year, Brisbane and Adelaide will perform worst, down 8.6% and 7%. NAB Zalanosta says despite low interest rates, drastically low migration levels will hit prices, while an unemployment rate above 8% will cause problems.
The problems we normally find is people then start to default. They run into trouble. They can't get enough money. I think this is going to be slightly different because the banks are not going to be foreclosing on anybody this side of September, and they're going to try and be very generous. But ultimately, gravity works.
NAB expects the unemployment rate to peak at 11.7% by the middle of the year, easing to just 7.3% by the end of 2021. The National Broadband Network has registered a record amount of activity as Australians continue to stay at home. Its busiest day ever was the evening of Wednesday, the 29th of April, with downloads of 13.9 terabits per second. So that terabits, that is the equivalent of downloading 31,000 HD movies in just 1 second.
In addition to everyone working, living, socialising and educating from home, we also know that there were some popular video gaming updates that took place on that day.
At the peak, downloads were 26% higher than compared with pre-COVID-19 levels in late February. And late this afternoon, the Foreign Investment Review Board approved the sale of Carlton and United Breweries to Japan's Asahi Beverages. Janice, the deal is worth $16 billion.
That is a lot of money. Thank you so much, Ricardo. Well, coming up next, the devastating impact of coronavirus on African wildlife tourism. Also, opinions divided, NRL players split ahead of the season resumption.
Tonight, 7:30. Join us for a welcome escape on the world's most beautiful railway.
I think the word is iconic. Very iconic.
Who doesn't love a railway? It brings you back to a different era.
How trains used to be.
It's just the magic of trains.
First class.
This is the way to travel.
All aboard the world's most beautiful railway. Tonight, 7:30 on SBS and on demand.
Greatest female entertainer of the 20th century.
She sings with all her heart.
So much soul and so much spirit. They really just wanted to know, well, what is the story of Whitney?
Uncover the truth behind one of the greatest voices in history.
She was simple. She became Whitney Houston. She was always trying to find her way back home.
They stayed saying you're beautiful.
She just wanted to escape the pressure.
The untold true story of Whitney, Sunday 9:20 on SBS and on demand.
If you're a small business, you've probably got a lot more questions than answers right now, which is why there's never been a more important time to speak to a professional accountant. They're specifically trained to help with business planning and cash flow management strategies tailored to support your business through these challenging times. They can even lend a hand with applications for government support to make sure you get the help your business needs. For further support and assistance, contact a professional accountant today.
At UE, we're all about how you use or don't use your car. So we're giving our clients and new clients temporary relief on their car insurance premiums if they're using their cars less right now. Go to UE.com.au. UE, you insured.
If you must leave home for essential reasons, stay 1.5 metres away from everyone. By doing this, we can prevent COVID-19 from spreading, and together we will save lives.
Harvey Norman presents your Westinghouse kitchen in premium dark stainless steel. Create healthier, tastier meals with air fry, available across the entire dark stainless steel range. Steam Assist will add moisture to your roasts whilst leaving a crisp, golden finish. And baking with steam gives you a better rise, crispier crust and fluffier centre. The steam reheat function is perfect for your leftovers. And for a thorough, chemical-free clean, the pyrolytic function will easily remove grease and grime. See the new range from Westinghouse in-store and online now at Harvey Norman.
A good movie can transport you anywhere.
The path you're on will take you to your destination.
Discover a world of film from your living room with SBS World Movies, a 24/7 channel dedicated to the best stories from around the world, free and in HD.
Imagine un monde entier à découvrir.
Bring cinema home with SBS World Movies. Who Do You Think You Are is back with a heartwarming new series.
If only you could go back in time.
Join these Aussie icons in a journey of self-discovery as they venture down the roads laid by their ancestors.
So this is where it gets really exciting.
From the bustling streets of Chennai...
This is where your ancestor got married.
...to Renaissance Malta.
Incredible. What a great story.
Who Do You Think You Are starts Tuesday 19th of May on SBS and on demand.
Coronavirus is having a devastating impact on African wildlife and the continent's tourism industry, which is worth billions of dollars. With fewer visitors and safari guides, there's been a surge in poaching. Conservationists say decades of progress are being undone.
Humans leave a unique scent. This anti-poaching unit checks for trails. Filmed exclusively for the BBC, the rangers of the Lewa Conservancy in northern Kenya. They are a small team protecting 250,000 square miles. The pandemic has just made their job much harder.
Since this pandemic of COVID-19, the threat has gone high in terms of people wanting to do poaching.
Tourism has collapsed overnight. Many people have no money. There has been a dramatic surge in poaching for food. This is what the rangers have found just over the last few weeks.
Lewa is just a snapshot of what the rest of Africa is facing. We're hearing constantly from our partners in East, South and Central Africa.
Just when more rangers are needed, the pandemic has badly hit donations to the charities that support them.
This is definitely the biggest threat that we've seen to the conservation world. We've had
the real pressure from the illegal wildlife trade, and that is ongoing.
These are the vast plains of Northwest Province, South Africa.
The calf is still alive so that we can rescue it and take it to the orphanage.
This organisation helps transport injured rhinos to safety. The calf is 2 months old. Her mother was found dead, her horn hacked off.
Yeah, bring the backside.
A real fear is this could become more common with no safari tourists or guides out and about.
These guys are our eyes and ears on the ground. They drive through the parks, they see wounded animals. I think it will be devastating to the parks and the reserves in South Africa if this situation continues.
They may look wild, but it costs a lot of money to keep these animals safe. The key question is, when will tourists and their wallets be able to return?
A doctor working on the front line against COVID-19 has told SBS World News that she was evicted from her accommodation because of fears she was a carrier. It is not an isolated case, and accommodation schemes have been put in place to assist health workers. But one doctor who did not want her identity revealed says she was left to fend for herself.
Hannah is a doctor who works in intensive care in New South Wales. After sharing a house with her landlord for almost a year, she was suddenly told to move out because she worked in healthcare.
I felt like it came out of nowhere. I had no issues staying at their place before. We got along really well. I didn't understand why she acted like this. I would understand more if it was like she was, someone at risk.
Finding new accommodation while working with critical care patients was a challenge.
It was absolutely terrible. I was in a place where I had to move within days. I was still working long hours. I couldn't get lots of people to help me move. I couldn't go view houses because that was not an option anymore.
Under law, Hannah doesn't classify as a tenant, so doesn't have any of the rights a tenant would normally be entitled to, such as the recently enacted 6-month moratorium on evictions.
There's tens of thousands of people in Australia who live with that kind of that precarity without having a proper tenancy agreement in place. All forms of housing, where it is your permanent place of residence, there should be proper protections to make sure that you can't be evicted arbitrarily, can't be evicted unfairly.
New South Wales, as well as other states such as Queensland and Victoria, have pledged to give healthcare workers free temporary accommodation during the pandemic to help keep them and their families safe. But all Hannah was offered was short-term hospital accommodation at $220 a night.
Where's the link to actually roll it out and give it to actual doctors who are experiencing this? Because I'm not the only one who went through this.
SBS News understands Hannah's case is not unique.
They're having difficulties, they can contact groups like the AMA and we can help them navigate the process. It is a bit opaque as to how to actually get it to happen, but the offer is there.
In a statement, a spokesperson from New South Wales Health told SBS News it sent a guidance note to hospitals about the offer on Tuesday, a month after the state government's announcement. Lynn Evelyn, SBS World News.
The ARL Commission has revised a vaccination waiver clause to allow NRL stars to play if they refuse a flu shot. However, Chairman Peter Vlandis has warned that those who don't sign will be banned. It follows Gold Coast star Bryce Cartwright's decision to reject a flu shot ahead of the proposed season start on May 28.
It's hardly the smooth resumption to play the NRL was hoping for. Bryce Cartwright's decision to not accept a vaccination met with both apathy.
It blows my mind, to be honest. It's their decision. They haven't pushed it on anyone else, and we're not pushing it on them as far as I know. So I couldn't care less.
I don't know if it's you play or not, if you have it or not, but from my point of view, I have it, and I'm all for it. So
and support.
Yeah, it's sort of blown up a little bit in the media now, but I think it'll be pretty heavy penalty to make him not play.
However, the Titans back rower is not alone. Canberra Raiders trio Josh Papali, Sia Soliola and Joseph Tapane also refused to sign an unmodified waiver. It's believed the trio, who missed training, made their decision on religious grounds, their teammates rallying behind them.
There has to be some sort of way that the NRL and whatever players are involved in this, there has to be some way that they can mutually come to some sort of agreement without withholding their, freedom of doing what they want.
ARL Commission Chairman Peter V'landys is set to enter talks with the Players' Union in the hope of encouraging vaccination. Whether those who refuse to take a flu shot will be officially banned from playing remains to be seen. Robert Grasso, SBS World News.
Coming up, the weather details, and king of his craft, a German electronic music pioneer, loses his battle with cancer.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are on our way.
Who doesn't love a railway?
This is the way to travel.
Join us for a welcome escape on the world's most beautiful railway. Next on SBS.
Now listen to what I'm telling you. If you want to make money, there's ways to do it. Laws are for cowards.
The new series 000 starts next Thursday 9:30 on SBS and on demand.
SBS gives you access to the latest COVID-19 facts in your language. Stay informed, stay safe, save lives. sbs.com.au/coronavirus.
When things change unexpectedly, we adapt. When things get complicated, we adapt. When we need to do things differently, we adapt. At Newcastle Permanent, we're adapting too, by increasing our Hunter-based call centre team to assist you and help give you some financial peace of mind. Because if one thing's certain in these uncertain times, we're here for you, and we're here for good.
At Chemist Warehouse, your health is our priority, and the safety and well-being of the community is our primary focus. That's why we offer same-day, contact-free home delivery for all prescriptions and essential healthcare. If you need your script filled, simply phone your local store to book your contact-free same-day home delivery. To find your local store, call 1300 734 876. Chemist Warehouse, always here for you.
This Saturday with Sportsbet, get the best payout across all three tabs with top-toed exotics. Nail a quinella, trifecta or even the quaddie and you'll get the biggest return. Top-toed exotics from Sportsbet.
As Australia moves to the NBN, now is the time to join an award-winning provider with service and performance that's out of this world. Turn to TPG. Get unlimited data with phone line for $59.99 a month. With more than 1.8 million broadband customers, our group is the second largest internet provider in Australia, connecting you to the internet.
tpg.com.au.
If you like the sound of a brand new washer or dryer in your laundry, spend $600 or more on one at Binglee and get free full service delivery.
You'll like the sound of that.
Free full service delivery right now from Binglee.
I've been the guy probably with the jingling pocket of change that's walked straight past someone. Hey bud, do you have a couple of bucks? You don't know the story of the person sitting there.
Filthy Rich and Homeless. Coming soon to SBS and on demand.
The things you care about are useless where we're going. You're crazy. Right? I just want you to tell me about it.
You've done some bad things, sweetie. Thriller Week continues with a bigger splash. Tonight, 9:30 on SBS World Movies and on demand.
To the weather details now, and a trough and cold front is crossing parts of South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania, and generating strong winds and showers. Another front approaching southwest Western Australia is causing rain to develop. Let's see what's happening in the major centres. Showers ahead for Adelaide and Perth, partly cloudy in Brisbane, Canberra, Melbourne and Hobart. It'll be sunny in Sydney and Darwin. Now we'll have a look further afield. A few showers for Auckland and Samoa, fine in Christchurch, partly cloudy skies for Noumea. To Southeast Asia, rain on the way for Bangkok and Honiara, drizzle for Denpasar, partly cloudy skies in Jakarta, thunder ahead for Kuala Lumpur. Further north, some drizzle ahead for Beijing and Shanghai, showers in Manila, cloudy in Seoul, all clear for Tokyo and Hong Kong. Let's head west. Fine and bright in Baghdad and Delhi, partly cloudy in Islamabad and Jerusalem, windy in Tehran. To Europe now, all clear for Athens and Paris. Cloudy skies for Berlin and Madrid, showers expected to hit Moscow. To Africa, drizzle in Addis Ababa, grey in Algiers and Casablanca, thunder in Lagos, a few showers for Nairobi, and fine and clear for Johannesburg. In South America, fine in Asunción and La Paz. Fine, rain ahead actually for Bogota and Caracas, stormy in Panama City and cloudy in Santiago. Finally for North America, rain on the way for New York and Mexico City, thunder in Dallas, snowfall in Toronto and partly cloudy skies for Havana. The co-founder of German electronic music pioneers Kraftwerk has died after a brief battle with cancer. Florian Schneider formed the group in 1970 alongside collaborator Ralf Rutter. They're recognised as the most influential figures in 20th century electronic music, heavily influencing modern styles including pop, dance and hip-hop. Representatives confirmed Mr. Schneider's death just a few days after his 73rd birthday. SBS Current Affairs Show The Feed is asking Australians how they're feeling during the COVID-19 crisis. Messages and home videos have been flooding in on the program's hotline. We'll be airing some of those calls, and tonight we present Ronald's story.
My name is Ronald Hay and I was a stockbroker for over 55 years. I started in the 1960s. These setbacks that we're having are a common feature of the world and Australia. We had a very strong boom in the 60s. They call it the Poseidon boom. But then in the 70s, we had a major setback. In the 80s, we had also a volatility.
Black Monday, Dow dropped 500 points.
And then
everything and more has been completely wiped out.
2008, another major setback. But in the intervening years, we've had some very buoyant periods prior to the virus appearing. Business had to adapt to change. And now as the Australian economy will change materially, business will have to adapt to this new environment. And it's going to be a different economic environment. And based on the past, I anticipate the share market will recover, and that gives me cause for optimism.
And to add your voice and your story, just call 1800 The Feed. That's 1800 843 333. And that is the world this Thursday. If you missed some of tonight's bulletin, you can always catch up on the SBS News website shortly. And a reminder, you can also watch the bulletin live there or on our app. But we'll be back with our next bulletin featuring Darren Murray at 10:20 tonight, and that's after building Britain's canals. Don't miss it. Good night.
Entertainer of the 20th century.
She sings with all her heart, so much soul and so much spirit.
They really just wanted to know, well, what is the story of Whitney?
Uncover the truth behind one of the greatest voices in history.
She was simple. She became Whitney Houston.
She was always trying to find her way back home.
They stayed saying you're beautiful. She just wanted to escape the pressure.
The Untold True Story of Whitney, Sunday 9:20 on SBS and on demand. This may be our biggest May yet on SBS On Demand.
I'm looking for the light.
I can't do this. Has Dave been dating a lot?
He's on fire, like John Mayer on fire.
Is that more or less than DiCaprio?
More.
Wow. We're not drug dealers.
What we do keeps the world's economy afloat.
Let's face it, investment banking is cold. Brauchen wir zu jemanden wie dich.
I'm looking for the answer.
It's a massive May on SBS On Demand.
Lift your spirits with the magic of music. The Seekers bid farewell to Australia. mellow autumn sounds from star cellist Sheku. And a celebration with Celtic Woman. Out now at Classics Direct and all good music stores.
On Insight,
I want someone to give me a hug.
solo sailor Jessica Watson.
My little boat with my whole world.
Explorers and experts on life after isolation.
There will be an adjustment period.
Then, on Dateline, the deadly impact of coronavirus has deepened the divide between France's rich and poor. Is this the start of the next French Revolution? Insight followed by Dateline, Tuesday from 8:30 on SBS and on demand.